SKS Type 56 carbine. The SKS entered Soviet service in 1949 as a self-loading carbine intended to bridge the gap between the Mosin Nagant and the new generation of select fire rifles. China adopted it in 1956 as the Type 56 carbine, while Yugoslavia, East Germany, Romania, Albania, North Korea, and North Vietnam produced local versions. Global totals run well into the millions, which explains its ubiquity in Cold War conflicts. It fires the 7.62 x 39mm M43 cartridge from a fixed 10-round box magazine, loaded by stripper clips or singly. The mechanism is a simple short-stroke gas system with a tilting bolt, with a reputation for reliability in mud and humidity. Standard length is about 40 inches with a 20.5-inch barrel, and weight sits near 3.8 kilograms. Velocity is roughly 735 mph, and the practical range for a rifleman is about 400 meters. A folding bayonet remained integral early Soviet, and many European guns used a blade. Later, Chinese rifles often a spike. During the Vietnam War, it equipped both North Vietnamese regulars and Viet Cong guerrillas in large numbers, particularly in the early and middle years of the conflict. U.S. units captured thousands, and the carbine proved handy in dense terrain where the stripper clip feed was as fast as magazines in careful hands. Some U.S. training units used captured SKS rifles for familiarization and for work once they returned stateside. The SKS served as an interim arm until the AK series displaced it, yet it persisted in second-line service for decades. Reserve stockpiles in dozens of countries kept it relevant into the 2010s, and civilian interest remains strong where import rules allow. M79 grenade launcher. The M79 emerged from the U.S. Army's Project Niblick, which sought to put organic explosive firepower directly in a rifle squad without the weight and complexity of a mortar. Springfield Armory refined a series of single-shot prototypes in the late 1950s, and the launcher was standardized on December 15, 1960 as the M79. Production began in 1961 and ran through the early 1970s with several contractors producing large quantities. It is a break-action, shoulder-fired launcher chambered for the 40x46mm low-velocity family. The high-low propulsion system inside the cartridge case moderates recoil while maintaining sufficient projectile velocity. Empty weight sits just under 3 kilograms, with a 14-inch rifled barrel and an adjustable folding leaf sight calibrated from about 75 to 375 meters, plus a fixed close-range setting when folded down. The launcher fires an extensive catalog of ammunition, including high explosive, smoke and illumination, buckshot for close-in defense, and riot control rounds. In Vietnam, the M79 typically went to a designated grenadier in each infantry squad, complementing riflemen by lobbing explosive rounds into defilade or tree lines. Operators valued its precision and consistent arming distance. The single-shot action and minimum arming range required a secondary weapon for close contact. Field modifications appeared shortened stocks and barrels for jungle carry, and special operations units experimented with multi-shot concepts like the pump-action China Lake launcher to increase rate of fire. Underbarrel systems such as the XM148 and later the M203 gradually replaced the standalone M79, yet the original persisted wherever accuracy with specialty or extended length rounds mattered. Several nations continued production or refurbishment, and modernized stocks and sights appear, even on contemporary refits adopted by law enforcement agencies for less lethal roles. RPG-2B40. Soviet designers began work on a new handheld anti-tank launcher in 1947 to supersede the underpowered RPG-1. The result, the RPG-2 entered Soviet service in 1954 and quickly filtered into Warsaw Pact and aligned states. It became the template for a family of licensed and unlicensed copies, including China's Type 56, Czechoslovakia's P-27, and Yugoslavia's M57, with night fighting kits like the NSP-2 sight, appearing by the late 1950s. The launcher uses a simple 40mm steel tube with a wooden heat shield and an external hammer. The standard projectile is a fin-stabilized 82mm heat round with an effective range around 100 to 150 meters. Rate of fire in trained hands is 3 to 4 rounds per minute. Armor penetration figures were sufficient against 1950s tanks, though later armor packages exceeded its capability frontally. Simplicity kept the system light and maintainable in austere conditions. In Vietnam, it was known as the B-40 and was distributed widely to both Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces. Besides ambushing armored cars and trucks, crews fired at helicopters during low hover phases and landing approaches, which made it a persistent nuisance to air mobility. Propaganda posters and photographs from the period often depicted fighters with B-40 launchers slung over the shoulder or staged at the ready. M14. The M14 traces to a post-war attempt to consolidate several U.S. small arms roles into a single 7.62 x51mm rifle. Springfield Armory's T-44 prototype won trials in the mid-1950s, and the rifle was standardized in 1957 as the U.S. Rifle 7.62mm M14. First Army deliveries began in 1959 with production shared by Springfield Armory, Winchester, Harrington and Richardson, and TRW. The concept aimed to replace the M1 Garand, M1, M2 carbines, M3 submachine gun, and even the Bayard in an automatic rifle variant. Mechanically, it is a gas-operated rotating bolt design that inherits Garand ergonomics while adding a detachable 20-round magazine and a self-regulating gas system. A 22-inch barrel and aperture sight supported accurate fire to several hundred yards. While select fire variants existed, the combination of full-power cartridge and lightened service weight made automatic fire difficult to control, and many rifles were issued or modified for semi-automatic operation only. The rifle entered Vietnam as the U.S. standard service arm. In jungle conditions, its length and weight complicated maneuvering, and wooden stocks were prone to swelling and warping in humidity before fiberglass furniture arrived in meaningful numbers. By 1967, the M16 family was replacing it as the general issue rifle, and the M14 shifted to training and specialized roles. Still, photographs from fights like the actions around Hamo Village during the Tet Offensive show Marines using M14s well into 1968. The platform's accuracy potential led to a second career. Accurized M14s became the M21 and later M25 sniper systems, and the rifle returned to service in the 2000s as a designated marksman base in modern chassis such as the Mk14 EBR. Abroad, Taiwan's Type 57 emerged from U.S. tooling, while other partners retained stockpiles for reserve or ceremonial use. In the civilian sphere, the semi-automatic M1A remains a staple, and surplus parts and magazines continue to support an enthusiast ecosystem. RPD light machine gun. The RPD was designed from 1943 to 1944 as a light machine gun for the new 7.62 x39mm intermediate cartridge, although ready near the end of the Second World War. Formal adoption lagged until 1948 with large-scale deliveries in the early 1950s. The RPD uses a long-stroke gas piston with a flapper-locking bolt and fires from the open bolt at about 650 rounds per minute. It feeds from a non-disintegrating segmented belt housed in a drum, typically 100 rounds assembled from 50 or 25-round sections that pin together with live rounds. The fixed barrel encourages doctrinal fired bursts and gas regulation to manage heat rather than rapid barrel changes. A folding bipod and wooden furniture complete the package, with a weight just over 7 kilograms. In Vietnam, the RPD was the principal belt-fed weapon for Viet Cong and North Vietnamese squads. Its controllable rate of fire, adequate accuracy, and ammunition compatibility with rifles made logistics simpler. U.S. Special Operations units sometimes adopted modified RPDs for reconnaissance missions, including shortened barrels and different belt arrangements, to keep a light team's firepower high without carrying a heavier GPMG. Production spread through allies and licensees, including China's Type 56 light machine gun and North Korea's Type 62. Although the RPK eventually replaced it in Soviet doctrine, the RPD never disappeared and continues to appear in conflicts worldwide. M60. Chambered in 7.62x51mm NATO and firing from the open bolt, the M60 typically cycles between 550 and 650 rounds per minute. The gun uses M13 disintegrating links and supports a quick change barrel, with a bipod attached to the barrel on early models and to the receiver on later variants. Overall length is about 43.5 inches with a 22-inch barrel, and weight hovers around 10.5 kilograms in early infantry configurations. Tripod, pintle, and aircraft mounts broadened its employment. In Vietnam, it became pervasive, carried by infantry squads, mounted on M113 armored personnel carriers and riverine patrol boats, and fitted as a door gun on helicopters, notably the M60D. Gunners appreciated its controllability and firepower, but heavy use in tropical grime revealed durability issues, including extractor wear, sear erosion leading to runaways, and early barrel latch snag problems. Field experience and later engineering changes produced improved E-series guns, and special operations units developed compact and continuous feed configurations for maritime and jungle use. The M60 family evolved through the 1980s and 1990s into heavier duty patterns such as the M60E3, M60E4, MK43, and most recently, the lighter M60E6 adopted by Denmark. In U.S. service, many roles transitioned to the M240, yet the M60 persists in naval and niche applications. DShK 12.7mm. The DShK fires the 12.7 108mm cartridge at roughly 600 rounds per minute. Gas operation with flapper locking keeps the mechanism robust, while mounting options range from a basic tripod to wheeled carriages with shields and extensive vehicle and tank cupola installations. A 1070mm barrel drives projectiles to about 850 mm systems, and effective anti-personnel and anti-aircraft ranges extend to around 2 kilometers. Armor penetration claims of roughly 20 mm at 500 meters made it dangerous to lightly armored vehicles of its era. In Southeast Asia, the DShK entered combat with the Viet Minh and remained a fixture in the hands of North Vietnamese and Allied forces. It presented a serious threat to helicopters and low-flying aircraft along infiltration routes and around defensive belts. Its weight and mobility compared favorably with towed automatic cannons when moving through jungle or mountainous terrain. The gun also appeared in fixed positions for base defense and as an anti-materiel weapon. Although later Soviet forces shifted to the NSV and then the Cord, the DShK's global footprint persists. Chinese Type 54 and Iranian variants continued production outside Russia, and the design appears frequently on technicals in modern conflicts. Recent reports describe its use for counter-drone fire when paired with searchlights or thermal devices. Surplus examples and spare parts remain common in arsenals across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. M1911A1. John Browning designed the M1911 in the first decade of the 20th century to satisfy U.S. Army trials for a semi-automatic service pistol. It was officially adopted on March 29, 1911, and refined into the M1911A1 in 1926, with ergonomic updates such as a shorter trigger, arched mainspring housing, and longer grip safety spur. Production surged during both World Wars and continued in peacetime for military, police, and civilian markets. The design is a single-action, short recoil, tilting barrel pistol in .45 ACP. Standard government models weigh around 39 ounces with an overall length of about 8.5 inches and a 5-inch barrel. The original magazine held 7 rounds, with later aftermarket capacities increasing. A combination of manual thumb safety and grip safety made the operating sequence straightforward for trained users, and the pistol's lock-up and trigger geometry supported accurate shooting. In Vietnam, the M1911A1 remained the standard sidearm for U.S. forces, carried by officers, NCOs, aviators, and special units. South Vietnamese forces also used it in quantity. As with other U.S. equipment, captured pistols saw limited use with Viet Cong and North Vietnamese units when ammunition was available, and improvised copies occasionally surfaced. The platform never disappeared from service after the U.S. military adopted 9.19mm pistols in the 1980s. Marine Corps units fielded modernized 1911s such as the M45 MEU SOC and later the M45A1 CQBP well into the 2010s. Commercially, the 1911 remains the most copied pistol design in the world, with extensive aftermarket support, competition pedigrees, and a wide range of manufacturers. AK-47 Type 56. China began licensed production of the Kalashnikov rifle in 1956, initially mirroring the Soviet AK Type 3 with a milled receiver before shifting to stamped construction akin to the AKM. The rifles entered People's Liberation Army service as the Type 56 and spread through export, aid, and licensed output across Asia and beyond. Norinco and Poly Technologies would become familiar labels for export models, while military lines covered fixed stock, underfolding, and later side-folding variants. Chambered in 7.62 at 139mm, the Type 56 uses the Kalashnikov long-stroke gas piston and rotating bolt. Cyclic rate clusters around 650 rounds per minute. Standard barrels are about 414mm with overall lengths near 880mm in fixed stock form, and weights average just under 4 kilograms. Distinctive Chinese features include the fully hooded front sight and the integral spike bayonet on many fixed stock rifles, alongside furniture and receiver details that differ subtly from Soviet production. In Vietnam, the Type 56 became the most common AK pattern rifle in North Vietnamese and Viet Cong hands. Chinese support ensured volume, and photographs from the period show the spike bayonet frequently. The rifle's reliability and ease of training suited guerrilla and regular formations alike. After relations deteriorated between China and Vietnam, both sides still fielded Type 56 rifles during the 1979 border war, a reminder of how widely the pattern had spread. The Type 56 family remains in service with reserve and militia formations in China and with militaries and irregulars worldwide. Export production continued for decades, and semi-automatic commercial variants entered many civilian markets under evolving trade names and compliance configurations. M16A1. The M16 story begins with Eugene Stoner's AR-10 and AR-15 concepts, which paired aluminum receivers and polymer furniture with a small caliber, high-velocity cartridge. Colt acquired rights to the AR-15 in 1959, and early U.S. military evaluations led to limited issues in the early 1960s. The XM16E1 entered Vietnam in 1965, and the rifle was standardized as the M16A1 in 1967, after engineering and logistical fixes addressed reliability problems. Mechanically, it uses a rotating bolt driven by gas tapped from the barrel and directed through a tube to the bolt carrier. The result is a lightweight, straight-line, low-recoil rifle capable of rapid controlled fire. Standard M16A1 configuration features a 20-inch barrel with 1/12 twist for the M193556mm cartridge, triangular handguards in early production, and 20 then 30-round magazines as procurement evolved. Cyclic rate varies around 700 to 900 rounds per minute, depending on ammunition and condition. In Vietnam, early rifles suffered stoppages tied to a change in propellant and the absence of chrome-plated chambers and bores, compounded by a shortage of cleaning kits and training, chrome plating, modified gas porting, improved buffers and extractor springs, proper cleaning gear, and better magazines transformed field performance. By 1969, the M16A1 had replaced the M14 as the standard U.S. service rifle in the theater. Special operations and aircrew units used shortened carbines from the CAR-15 family, while the underbarrel M203 later added organic grenade capability at the individual level. The basic platform evolved into the M16A2 with a heavier barrel and faster twist for SS-109 TM-855 ammunition, then into flat-top A4s and into the compact M4 carbine that now dominates U.S. service. If you found this video informative, feel free to share it with others who appreciate firearms history, and subscribe for future installments. Topic suggestions are always welcome in the comments. Thanks for watching.